Using the pre-built version of SpeedDuel decks is one of the funnest ways to enjoy a duel. For the most part, Konami has a rough idea of what each character deck is trying to accomplish, and they do their best at making each deck feel somewhat near the same power level. Somewhat. That being said, there's another way to enjoy speed duels, the way that I personally enjoy playing them. That being by optimizing each of the character strategies by using 3 copies of each of the character boxes. And that's exactly what I plan on doing on today's video. But before we do begin, there are a few ground rules that I would like to set before we begin. First, I'm allowed to use whatever skill I desire for each of the characters as long as they're related to their strategy. Most of the characters in these sets come with at least 2 different skills that you can use, so it'll be up to me which one I prefer to use and build around. 2. I'm only able to use the cards that each individual character comes with in their regular deck. This means I'm not allowed to use any of the cards in the miscellaneous section. And finally, 3. I'll do my best to still build into what the original idea of the strategy was trying to accomplish, no matter how bad I think the original strategy might be. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video at any point in time, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe. As a matter of fact, you should just subscribe right now since I have a plethora of different videos discussing speed duels like this. And if you think you're already subscribed, then do me a favor and double check. It goes a long way in helping the channel grow. But if you would like to take your support a step further, then you can also become a channel member for only 99 cents. Rewards that come with this includes a badge next to your name, custom Topsy emojis, and a shout out at the end of the videos. But with all that being said, let's begin. Alright then guys, and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be continuing on with our little series of upgrading each of the character decks from every speed duel box, and today we are tackling Streets of Battle City, starting off with Yugi. And Yugi's deck is one of those strategies that at first glance I was really turned off of because I thought, oh, here we go again, another Dark Magician deck. But honestly, the more I played it, the more it grew on me, and overall it's really fun. So essentially what we have here is a Dark Paladin slash spell counter based deck that tries to blend the 2 strategies together. And if I'm being honest, they didn't really accomplish this goal all that well, just because the skills that you get for this deck, while cool, don't really mesh together the 2 decks all that well. And that was a little bit upsetting. We have a lot of great stuff in here. Cards like Spell Paragraphs are incredible, especially for the spell counter aspect of the deck. Cards like Mage Power and Solitary Sword of Poison are great for battle, and we even have really nice tech options. Cards like Breaker and Old Vindictive Magician are just overall solid monsters. And that being said, let's take a look at what I did for Yugi. Alright then, so as I mentioned, the Buster Blader deck with Yugi spell counter strategy don't really work well together. I tried shoehorning in the Dark Magician, the Buster Blader into this deck, but my goodness, the deck would break so bad, and even with cards like Skilled White Magician and Skilled Dark Magician, it still did not work out. So instead, I decided, well, let's just go fully in on spell counters instead. Before we break down the deck, let's go ahead and take a look at the skill that we're going to be working with. It's going to be the Ultimate Wizard. This skill is incredible. Upon activation, it gives all the monsters on the field that can get spell counters a spell counter, and then every single turn you can give 1 spellcaster monster a spell counter in addition. Essentially, if you do this correctly, Breaker can behave like a board wipe for your opponent's backward, which is pretty insane. That being said, let's go ahead and break down the deck. So essentially, we have 3 copies of Breaker. This is the best monster of the deck. It's going to be Breaker beatdown essentially if you play this strategy. 3 copies of Blast Magician. This card's really cool because you have the ability of getting rid of any monster your opponent may have. However, it is at a really convoluted method. Next up, we have 1 copy of Alchemism, the Black Spell. This is just a way to disperse some spell counter onto our monsters, and also he has the ability of going to defense mode, so that's really nice. We have the Apprentice Magician, which is able to float into the Magician of Faith, and the Old Vindictive. Moth is going to be just great to go ahead and recycle cards like Spell Power Grasp or Mage Power if you really need to, and Old Vindictive is a really surefire way of getting rid of any monster your opponent may have. We already said Spell Power Grasp is great for distributing spell counters, Mage Power, duh, for the battle phase, and finally Pitch Black Power Stone as another way to go ahead and make sure we always have spell counters available for our monsters. This deck is incredibly fun to play. Essentially, you're going to be playing a Protect the Castle style strategy, with Breaker being your main monster on your field at all times if possible. Being able to continuously threaten your opponent's back row is incredible off of Breaker, and if you're able to back him up with cards like Mage Power and Pitch Black Power Stone, he can get very strong. Another option you could potentially add into this deck is maybe Solitary Sword of Poison. The only issue with this card is that you can only control 1 monster when you activate this, or else this card leaves. So I decided Mage Power just got the job done better. That's pretty much Yugi's deck, and let's move on to the next character now. Alright then, right after Yugi we have Joey. And Joey has, well, it's Joey good stuff. But behind the shell of what looks like an awful strategy with cards like Baby Dragon, Free, like these random junk cards, there's actually a really fun deck behind it with cards like Geoffrey the Red Eyes Iron Knight, which is an incredible monster in this deck. Aside from that, at first glance, this deck doesn't really look all that coherent. As we can see, it's like a fusion-based strategy that involves a lot of warriors, and we have a interesting extra deck to say the least. The main gimmick of this deck relies on the two skills with Iron Grit and Heart of Warrior, which can give you two incredibly powerful strategies. And with the deck that I ended up constructing for Joey, you can utilize either of these skills and have a really solid deck. With that being said, let's take a look at what I ended up doing with Joey. Alright then, so here we have Joey's deck, and as you can see, Geoffrey is a really important card in this strategy. Essentially, the whole gist of this deck is going to be reliant on either Iron Grit or Heart of Warrior, as I mentioned. Realistically, you can swap out these skills and just have the deck work immediately the same way. Personally, I think I prefer Iron Grit just because I like the ability of having Geoffrey be unaffected by everything your opponent may have. That makes him actually really annoying to deal with. In case you're unfamiliar with these skills, Iron Grit is literally what is mentioned. Geoffrey is just unaffected by everything, and that means specifically Geoffrey the Iron Knight, this version, not the Red Eyes Geoffrey. So really important distinction to keep in mind. While Heart of Warrior is a really interesting skill that's seen a lot of play in the past and even recently, I think. Essentially what this skill allows you to do is it allows you to discard a card from your hand to special summon a fusion from your extra deck for free. This pretty much ensures that every single turn you have a fairly decently statted monster available to you, and this does change the way the deck pilots, but overall really fun decks to go ahead and play. So let's go ahead and break down what the deck is trying to accomplish and all the cards in it. So we have 3 copies of Geoffrey and 3 copies of Geoffrey the Iron Knight. These cards in particular are really powerful. They each serve their own unique purpose, with Geoffrey being one of the best monsters to go ahead and declare an attack just because he is going to be unaffected. This doesn't mean your opponent can't activate it. They can still activate it and do nothing to Geoffrey. So a really important distinction. Geoffrey the Iron Knight is going to be your main way of dealing with your opponent's back row via his effect, where when he gets equipped with something, you can just pop that equip card to pop an opponent's back row. Really cool, a little interaction. We have Rocket Warrior here. Realistically speaking, you don't need this guy. You can replace him with anything else. I just like his little interaction where he's able to reduce a monster your opponent has by 500. This makes it to where you're able to more easily deal with your opponent's monsters with cards like Geoffrey later on during the duel. The same applies with Command Knight. Do keep in mind that Command Knight is not going to be boosting up Geoffrey the Iron Knight, but he can boost up the Red Eyes Iron Knight. After that, we have 3 copies of Meridian Captain as a way to go ahead and swarm the field and also give your other warrior monsters protection. 2 Rotus because we're playing warriors, duh. We have the 1 Dice Foon. I figured that having extra back row removal is never hurts. You can replace this easily with something like a United We Stand if you really wanted to. I just really like back row removal. Finally, we have 3 copies of Blast with Chain and 3 copies of Kuna with Chain. Blast with Chain is probably the most important card next to Geoffrey because you have the ability of popping an opponent's monster, and also, I mean, I guess the attack gain is kind of cool. When you pair this card up with the Red Eyes Knight, essentially you get both a monster and a spell and trap cards pop, which is incredibly powerful. However, this still works with regular Geoffrey. It's only going to result in a regular monster pop. While Tuna with Chain, this is a pseudo version of the Geoffrey effect. The only thing is you're only going to be able to pop an opponent's back row. Tuna with Chain also does work as a way to defend yourself during the battle phase, so it can still be a decent tech overall. As I mentioned, this deck works with either of these skills. It really just depends on you as a player, or you can go ahead and upgrade it by removing cards like the Dice Foon, maybe the Rocket Warrior, and adding stuff like the United We Stand in order to make sure that your Guiltia or your Flame Swordsman gets a lot bigger. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the deck, and give me your thoughts. We now move on to Mako Tsunami, and Mako I had such high hopes for as a character, getting a fully fledged deck in SpeedDuels, but unfortunately Mako didn't really get a deck that supported Fortress well the way I wanted it to, and that's really upsetting. yeah, as I mentioned, this is a Fortress Well slash Umi deck, and it has a lot of really fun stuff in it. Cards like the Flying Fang are oddly really satisfying to use. Oyster Meister pair up phenomenally with Fish Step Charge, and yes, it is cool that we got the Fortress Well, but it's not that great. So that is really upsetting. Aside from that, Mako does get two pretty interesting skills in Well of a Tale and a Bountiful Ocean. In my opinion, I think Bountiful Ocean is significantly better. That being said, let's take a look at what I ended up constructing for Mako. Okay, so here is what I ended up doing for Mako. Essentially, we are going to be working with a Bountiful Ocean as our main skill. What this skill does, it pretty much just makes your 7-color fish, which is going to be the only monster relevant for this deck, unaffected by non-water monster effects. But the best part about the skill, the first one doesn't really matter, is the fact that as long as you have Umi on the field, every single turn you're able to recycle a water from your graveyard. And that's really important because you're able to just get access to your 7-color fish if your opponent gets rid of it, cards like Oyster Meister, and etc. So really powerful resource management. I really like that skill. That being said, let's go ahead and break down the deck. So as you can see, we have 3 copies of 7-color fish. This is going to be the main monster you're going to be summoning out because he has a pseudo protection effect, and also he is pretty big, getting up to 2k with Umi, so that's really nice. Next up, we have 2 copies of Piercing Moray. I like this card a lot because he has the potential of getting extremely big, be able to tribute any water monster to go ahead and gain 600 attack points. That is a permanent attack gain, and when you pair it up with the Bountiful Ocean, that's a free gain essentially because you can just recover the monster you go ahead and tribute off for him. After that, we have 1 copy of Flying Fang. This card is surprisingly really annoying to deal with because each time he goes ahead and attacks a monster, you're able to banish him. And the importance of this effect, essentially, it makes it to where your opponent is never really able to clear your board because upon your turn, you're able to bring him back. And this is a really weird protection effect, and it does take a bit of practice to go ahead and like really utilize him well, but when you do, this card becomes very annoying. After that, we have 3 copies of Oyster Meister. Next to like 7-color fish, this is probably one of the best cards in your deck, and it's because of the interaction with Fish Step Charge, which we'll get to more in a minute. Essentially, this guy has the effect when he leaves the field via anything but destruction, you're able to summon out a token for free, and that is really good. And finally, we have 2 copies of Needle Sunfish as a way to go ahead and reduce the attack of monsters your opponent may have that your Moray or your 7-color fish aren't able to deal with on their own. Onto the Bone Trap cards, we have 2 copies of Surface as a way to go ahead and swarm your field. And finally, of course, Umi, we don't really have to talk about it. We have 1 copy of Paleozoic Adonia. I like this card just because it's a nice little flex in the deck. Your monsters are really weak, so being able to do this is really nice. Now, Fish Step Charge is probably one of the most important cards in the deck because it allows you to tribute a fish monster to destroy a card on the field and then draw one. As I've already mentioned, this pairs up incredibly well with Oyster Meister, being able to tribute him off, get rid of an opponent's card, get a token on your field, and then draw 1 card. So that's incredible. And then when you consider the fact that Bountiful Ocean gets you back that resource back to your hand, really fun deck, probably the one that I had the most fun piloting. And if you wanted to make some changes, you could try adding in Fortress Well. I tried, but again, because you were not able to search it well, you don't have cards like Advanced Ritual Art or Pre-Preparation Rites, it makes it really difficult to go ahead and use this, and using Will of a Tale makes the deck just not feel good at all, so it didn't really work out. You could potentially add Tornado Wall, maybe like made it of the Aqua, but I just didn't find the need for them. And the Legendary Fisherman, if we had Legendary Ocean instead of regular Umi, maybe I would have considered him. But yeah, that's my take on Mako. Give me your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright then, so next up we have Weevil. And yeah, if you're familiar with Streets of Battle City, then you already know that Weevil has one of the most unfun, most unfair skills in all the speed duels with My Precious Queen. It honestly doesn't really matter what the deck has with the fact that My Precious Queen is that powerful of a skill. But Weevil, not only does he have a broken skill, he also has a lot of great cards in this strategy, with cards of the like of Widespread Ruin being incredible forms of battle disruption, the Parasite Paranoid being a very powerful insect monster. Insect Queen isn't even that bad in this strategy. You can pair it up with cards like DNA Surgery, Eradicating Aerosol, Verdant Sanctuary for consistency. This deck pretty much has everything you could ask for, so you can only imagine how powerful the deck we can make out of this when we can use 3 copies of it. That being said, let's take a look at what I did with Weevil. Okay then, so here we have Weeble's deck, and it should be to no one's surprise, but we built around the My Precious Queen skill. If you're unfamiliar with the skill, essentially what it does is that during either player's end phase, this card produces a token on your field. Yes, this includes your opponent's end phase as well. And that token is pretty interesting because it is a recurring token that comes on every single turn. This skill additionally allows you to tribute summon level 7 insect monsters, hence the Insect Queen. It pretty much allows you to tribute summon her with one tribute, so that's really nice. But if that wasn't enough, it also gives Insect Queen the ability to tribute a monster in hand for her to attack. So really powerful effects here. But the breakdown essentially is we are playing 2 Insect Queens with 1 Insect Princess. These cards are searchable off the Resonance Insect. We get into Insect Resonance with the Howling Insect, which is also able to go into the Pinch Hopper, which Pinch Hopper allows you to special summon an Insect monster from your hand when it leaves the field, meaning that you can go ahead and cheat out cards like Insect Queen or Princess if you really needed to. Additionally, we are playing the 2 Parasite Paranoids because this card is incredible and there's no reason you should not be playing it. This card essentially allows you to attach itself to an opponent's monster, and with that card leaves the field, or this card leaves the field, you can special summon a level 7 insect monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning conditions. After that, we have our back row with 3 copies of Dust Tornado for back removal, 3 Widespread Ruins to pretty much make our opponent feel afraid when they declare an attack, and 2 copies of DNA Surgery to go ahead and pair up with the Insect Princess. Now, if you don't want to play with My Precious Queen, I don't blame you. This skill is really unfun for other people. You could tech in the Insect Infestation instead. You could change the deck around a little bit, maybe adding cards like the Parasite, maybe getting rid of the Insect Princess and Queen, I would say so. Adding a few of these so you can proc the effect of it a lot easier. And yeah, and then after that, you could play around with the ratios of cards like Pinch Hopper, maybe opt out of playing it, maybe add more copies of Insect Howling to get access to Parasite Paranoid faster. You can play around with the ratios here. If you play to the full gimmick of Insect Infestation, you can start taking in cards like Eradicating Aerosol. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with that. That being said, let's move on to the next character now. All right then, so moving on now, we have Esperoba, and so if you're familiar with my channel, you already know I am not a huge fan of almost any deck Esperoba's ever gotten in speed duels, and this is no exception. So Esperoba once again ended up getting a different Jinzo deck, and it's not incredible either. There is some cool stuff in his deck, whether it be cards like the Reflect Bounder is kind of neat, some new legacy support for Jinzo as well, but aside from that, the deck lacks quite a bit, and not to mention the fact that both his skills, they're underwhelming to say the least, especially given just how weak the deck is. Needless to say, it was a little difficult building something viable for him, so let's take a look at what I did. So the good thing is that at least this version of Esperoba's deck is a bit more honed in as to what exactly it's trying to accomplish compared to the one that we had to fix up for the original Battle City box. This time around, we actually do have something, a goal in mind for our strategy. And realistically speaking here, neither one of these 2 skills are all that effective in fixing our deck. I decided to go with Intel from the Cosmos as the skill we're going to be working with, just because having hand knowledge, at least from whatever your opponent draws, is nice, and the Machine Menace is almost never gonna come up. Your opponent has to be playing like a continuous trap card in order to make this viable, so I thought might as well get the hand knowledge. That being said, let's go ahead and break down what cards I ended up giving for Esperoba's deck. So starting off, we have double copies of Jinzo. I did attempt to fit in Jinzo Lord, but unfortunately this card it never shows up when it has to, and whenever I do open it, it's always in the most unplayable hand, so I had to give myself something better, and this card was just not it. It's actually terrible. After that, we have 3 copies of Reflect Bounder. This is probably one of the best cards you have in your strategy, allowing you to essentially out any monster your opponent has, so this is pretty incredible. 2 copies of Destructotron. It's gonna work as our main form of backward removal. We did have Cosmic Cyclone as an option, but you'll see why I chose this over that. And then finally, 3 copies of Jinzo Returner. This is the best way you have to go ahead and summon out Jinzo, which is a little sad. This card is not fantastic. Moving on to the spell and trap card lineup, we have 3 copies of Creature Swap. You're gonna be giving your opponent your cards very often just because they're not that great. Double Foolish Burial in order to proc the effect of Jinzo Returner. Double copies of Cyber Energy Shock. This card is really fun. The only issue is that you need Jinzo on the field in order to make it viable, but it felt like a pretty cool card to use overall. One copy of the Cosmo Channeling. I like this card, especially because we are playing 3 creature swaps. It gives you some really fun little interactions where you're able to go ahead and use up one of the monsters you take from your opponent to summon back Jinzo from the graveyard. So that's another different way we can go ahead and summon out Jinzo. And finally, double copies of Draining Shield. Let's face it, if you don't have your Jinzo play available to you, you at least want to know that you can survive an attack, so that's why we have it here. If you were to make some changes to the deck, options could be trying out the Jinzo Lord again, as I said, because this card is not searchable, because you can't summon it out easier like the Red Ice Darkness Dragon or the Vampire Genesis, I can't justify having this in the deck. Also, it's not searchable either, so it's just it makes it really unplayable. The Mega Fiend Saber, I like this card, but it's just Diet Cyber Dragon. It requires far too much setup in order to go ahead and establish him, so it bricked me more often than not. Cosmic Cyclone would be cool to add into the deck, but I feel like with the Destructotron already available to you, what you can do is you can summon him out, go ahead and pop your opponent's back row, activate creature swap, give this to your opponent, take whatever monster they have, and then during the end phase, if you don't destroy the Destructotron, it leaves on its own because it destroys itself. I feel like having a monster that's able to do that on its own, it serves a better purpose than the Cosmic overall. Additionally, there's also cards like the Psychic Shockwave or the Mind Crush. Mind Crush could be interesting, maybe like in the side deck. And Psychic Shockwave, I found that it wasn't as effective as I would hope. You could probably fit it in if you don't want to use Drain Shield, but I found this version to work the best overall. But give me your thoughts. Oh, what do you know? Next up, we have Rare Hunter. We had back-to-back my 2 least favorite decks from Streets of Battle City. And Rare Hunter is interesting because he's in a similar boat as Esperoba, where he has 2 pretty underwhelming skills. The deck lacks much direction. He has neat stuff in here. Like, I don't mind seeing cards like the Night Being, Nobleman, you know, Floodgates. These are good cards, conventional good cards in Speed Duels. But like when you take a look at the deck, there's literally nothing he's trying to accomplish. It's just a mosh podge of monsters and spell and trap cards. But luckily for us, because we do have a pretty robust lineup of spell and trap cards, you can make something halfway decent. Let's take a look at what I did. Okay, so here is the deck that I ended up making for Rare Hunter. And the skill that we're going to be using is Stalked by the Rare Hunter. As I said, both his skills are not incredible. At least this one gives you, it's a better win more card because you do get the ability to set a monster your opponent had on their field, which gives you access to tribute plays, which is kind of cool. But besides that, it's only okay. The collector skill, the cost is far too heavy in order to properly use it, and I don't think any card you're searching is powerful enough to like justify it, so that's why we're not using that one. All right, so let's actually break down the deck now. So we are playing double Parshaft just because I think overall it works better as a boss monster over something like the Red Enchanter. Red Enchanter takes far too much setup and you need more proactive spell cards in order to make it actually work. It would have been great in Yugi's deck, but Rare Hunter got him for some reason. 3 copies of Voltic Kong. This is probably one of your better normal summons, and it can give you an alternative win con where you can mill your opponent out. 3 copies of the Twin Barrel Dragon. In off chances, the effect will come up and you will be able to pop a card your opponent controls, so that's pretty cool. 1 copy of the Mask of Darkness so you can recycle some of your trap cards, and 3 copies of Sphere Karibo because you're gonna need it. Moving on to the spell trap card lineup, we have 3 copies of Night Beam. You always love seeing some back removal. 1 copy of Nobleman, a Crossout. Realistically speaking, you could opt out of the Crossout if you find it not to be super useful. I do find that if you're able to go on the offensive, it can come up in clutch, but if your opponent has like bigger monsters, it's kind of useless. The 1 Floodgate Trap Hole because it is at 1. The Middle Morph in order to make the Parshaft a lot more scarier. And finally, 2 Michizures because, well, you don't have the strongest monsters around, so you might want to be able to get rid of your opponent's monster. Yeah, there's really no flashiness to this deck. It's pretty standard, big monster, then try to deal with your opponent's back row or utilize your back row in order to make yourself stronger. It's really boring, really bland, but at least it's more effective than like the last deck we covered. Some additional options for this deck, you could go heavier into dark monsters and add in the Allure Darkness for more consistency. I didn't really like that variant of the deck just because we didn't have access to the Voltic Kong, and cards like Sphere Karibo I kind of want to keep around to be able to utilize them. There's also something like the Forceful Checkpoint. I think it's a less reliable card compared to Sphere Karibo, but it is an option if you really care about getting attacked. But yeah, this is the build, and I mean, I'm not super happy with it, but I mean, make do with what you got, I suppose. Okay, moving on, we are on to the second to last character of Street streets of Battle City with Arcana. And Arcana had a Dark Magician based strategy while utilizing the Kaiku family lineup. And for some reason, he also had the Seal Master of Masai. I don't know why. This card is terrible. I will tell you now, don't try to build around this card. It's not that good. But aside from that, as I said, we have 3 Dark Magicians in this deck, and a good amount of Dark Magician support with the Dark Magic Attack, Dark Magic Curtain, and where is it at? The Thousand Knives. And the skill that the deck gets is pretty okay, so it makes for a pretty interesting deck overall. That being said, let's take a look at what I ended up doing. Okay, so here is the newly improved Arcana deck, and yeah, we're just trying to maximize the ability to utilize either Now You See Them or Dark Renewal. Essentially, the deck is trying to use the ability of Now You See Them in order to go ahead and bypass the fact that you can break with the Dark Magician by utilizing those Dark Magicians in hand to draw many cards. I really like this skill because not only does it help you unbrick your hand, but additionally, you can kind of proc this ability on your own by searching out the Dark Magician, and we'll get into more of that in just a second. That being said, let's go ahead and break down the deck itself. As you can see, we are playing 3 copies of Dark Magician because we want to utilize the effect of this skill card. 3 copies of Kaiku. Kaiku overall is a really powerful monster with a very powerful effect that can work great as a control monster. We have 3 copies of Chao Sai. So the reason why we are playing the Chao Sai is because of his attack stat. That's pretty much it. After that, we are playing 3 copies of the Legion of the Fiend Jester. I like this card a lot, especially when paired up with something like a Dark Renewal. A really cool monster that whenever it gets destroyed, you can search out for Dark Magician. You can proc the effect of Now You See Them on your own by searching out the Dark Magician. So really cool effect right there. After that, we are playing the 1 Dark Magic Attack, 1000 Knives, and double copies of Anti-Magic Arrows. We have these cards because somebody has Dark Magician is fairly easily, so it helps having access to powerful removal like these 2. And the Anti-Magic Arrows is here as our generic form of bypassing our opponent's back row whenever we don't have a Dark Magician play available to us. Finally, we have 3 copies of Dark Renewal and 1 copy of Birthright. These are strictly for the Dark Magician itself. Dark Renewal I love a lot because with the ability of Dark Renewal, you can tribute a monster you control, preferably the Legion of the Fiend Jester, and tribute an opponent's monster as well, to special summon a Dark Magician from your hand, deck, or graveyard, which is incredibly powerful. While the Birthright just gives you the ability to special summon Dark Magician from the grave. As a whole, the deck works really great. Dark Renewal is really fun overall, and I wish there was more flashy cards I could have used for a bit more spice, but this is all we really had to work with. Some options to go ahead and modulate the deck could be something like a Summoner's Art if you really wanted to search out Dark Magician, but if you just open a Summoner's Art with no other Dark Magician, it's kind of a useless card. So I thought to myself, I don't really need this. Additionally, we could potentially use some of the other monsters in the family line like the Chao Land or the Anarchist Monk or the Mai Cow, but I just didn't find their effects to be all that worthwhile. Overall, the deck worked out better than I expected, and I personally like this build. Alright then, so we have the last character up with Strings, and Strings had a very interesting deck because Strings was one of those odd characters like Arcana where his deck came in complete. What I mean by this is that both Arcana and Strings had one of their main deck monsters or main deck cards be a promo, which was a guaranteed promo, keep in mind. And that promo for Strings was Slifer the Sky Dragon, which I think is kind of funny. Strings essentially has a deck that is trying to summon out Slifer the Sky Dragon as efficiently as possible, which is kind of a funny thing to say because it's not that efficient at doing so. But additionally, it also has a slime deck that is pretty fun to use, and one of the skills in Slimy Disposition was actually a very viable skill at one point in Yu-Gi-Oh! That being said, let's take a look at what I ended up doing. Okay, so here we have the deck that I ended up building for Strings, and as I mentioned, we are going to be working with Slimy Disposition. If you're unfamiliar with this skill is actually pretty incredible in the way that it works. If you control either Humanoid Slime or Worm Drake face up on your field, you're able to, every single turn, discard a card to summon out the Humanoid Worm Drake by using the other material from the deck. This is just a continuous effect that is always active. Not only that, but you also have the ability that you can just special summon out the Humanoid Slime or the Worm Drake from your graveyard every single turn. So this this is a really powerful skill. The only downside to this ability is that the monster summoned off the effect of Slimy Disposition cannot be attributed except for the tribute summon of a god card. But aside from that, a really fun skill overall. That being said, let's actually talk about the deck and what ended up adding into it. So as you can see, we have 3 Worm Drakes and 3 Humanoid Slimes. These cards are crucial to the deck because you need them for your future monster. Next up, we have the 3 Mother Grizzlies to get access to the Humanoid Slime, or you can also go into the Reactor Slime. Reactor Slime is really interesting because he can work as a 1 monster tribute for the Slime for the Sky Dragon, but the thing is, it's a bit harder to do that than you might expect because of the fact that all the monsters you're summoning out are going to be very weak tokens, making them not as reliable as you may think. The reason we have the Reactor Slime in particular is to pair it up with this. This is objectively the most powerful card you have in your deck with Token Sunday. And what Token Sunday does, it essentially allows you to destroy as many tokens that you control as possible to destroy that many cards on your opponent's side of the field. Cool thing about this card, Reactor Slime, is that if you summon this card, you're able to summon out 2 tokens immediately. And if you have Reactor Slime plus Token Sunday, you can, with 1 summon, get rid of 2 cards your opponent controls, which is extremely powerful, and is why I say Token Sunday is the most powerful card in the deck. After that, we have Infinite Cards, and finally Solemn Wishes in this deck. Thinking about it more, I would say replace Infinite Cards with something like a Token Stampede, just to give the tokens you summon off Reactor Slime some staying ability. And finally, we do have 3 copies of Solemn Wishes to keep ourselves alive because you're going to be taking so much damage from this deck. Yeah, I mean, the deck is fairly simple. You want to open up one of these guys, discard literally anything to summon out the Worm Drake. With the help of the Worm Drake, you should be able to apply a lot of pressure to your opponent and then slowly but surely build up your board in order to summon out the Slime for the Sky Dragon by attributing everything on your field and then just winning from there. Yeah, I mean, the deck is... it's okay, it's cool, but it's not the craziest thing ever. You need more outside cards to make this deck actually feel really scary. I did end up building a second deck for slimes, for strings themselves, my bad, using Slimy Slimes because I thought it was a interesting enough skill that we could build another deck. So let me show you. Okay, so this is the other deck that I built for strings that utilizes the ability of these Slimy Slimes. Essentially, you are maximizing your copies of Jam Breeding Machine and Revival Jam to utilize the effect of Slimy Slimes, where if Revival Jam summons itself via its own effect, you're able to draw 3 cards. The only issue with this deck is that it's not good. I'll keep it a buck. There's no way of protecting the monsters you summon. They're all very weak, and accumulating the field that you need to summon out Slifer is extremely difficult. It does have a lot of cool abilities in the fact that you can use the Jam Breeding Machine activating your field to pop an opponent's back row. I like the fact that you can draw so many cards, but like, you're really not surviving a lot unless your opponent just falls asleep while dueling against you. So that's why we didn't have this be the default deck. But if you want to try it out, this is I guess decent shell for it, but yeah, this is the best I could do with what we had available. And with that, this concludes today's video. In the comment section below, give me your thoughts on today's decks and what changes you would personally make. Anyway, if you'd like to show your support for the channel, then please go ahead and leave a like and subscribe. But if you would like to take it a step further, then you can always become a channel member for only 99 cents. You get a badge next to your name with custom Topsy emojis and a shout out at the end of the videos. On that note, huge shout out to our current channel members, PushX to start, and of course, Zedric. Huge thank you to you guys, and I really do appreciate it. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching till the end, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye guys.